Well, good morning, and this is Ian R. Crane, and it's the morning of Friday, the 12th of July, 2019. And I'm back here in East Lancashire, and in the field where my studio audience was paying particular attention earlier in the week. Or was it last week? I've lost track of time now. I think it was last Friday, wasn't it? Anyway, it's a bit more peaceful here. It's a balmy 16 degrees, although there is a bit of wind chill factor, and the sky is full of rain. But anyway, hopefully that'll filter out before the cricket on Sunday. So I doubt too many people are necessarily going to be doing too much on Sunday as they watch the cricket final, and it's right to relax a little bit with all the other madness that's going on around us. And the title of this morning's broadcast is Sit Back and Watch the 5G infrastructure roll out. Now, is that a statement or a question mark? Because the only reason it is going to roll out is because we do sit back. But more of that later. Meanwhile, a couple of days ago, it may have escaped your attention that Gatwick Airport was shut down for a few minutes shy of 4 hours on Wednesday evening. And when I first heard that, I thought, well, here we go again, another drone causing the delay. But this time, it seems that the management of Gatwick Airport had an attack of honesty and actually admitted to an air traffic control problem. Well, interestingly, when the last debacle manifested, that was the word that was coming out of Gatwick, that there was a problem with air traffic control. And indeed, apparently on a flight landing the night before, the pilot told his passengers that there might be a bit of a delay due to a problem with air traffic control. But anyway, the following day, of course, the media was hit with the drone scandal, which, despite the full resources of the British military and Sussex police, they couldn't track it down. And of course, they ended up arresting a local couple, which was completely erroneous. And I hope that that couple are pursuing Sussex police for an enormous amount of compensation for all the trauma that they were put through due to that false accusation. And of course, never let a good crisis go to waste, as is the mantra of the extreme socio-psychopath, Rahm Emanuel. And so consequently, here was an opportunity to demonize drones in the eyes of the wider public and blame all of those horrendous Christmas delays on a rogue drone operator, when of course there was nothing to be seen. So anyway, of course, that's why I mentioned on Wednesday that the controlled opposition group Extinction Rebellion, many of whom at the grassroots level unfortunately are just unthinking useful tools for the establishment to use to create a narrative. And, Extinction Rebellion's latest ruse is to announce that they're going to shut down Heathrow by flying multiple drones at heights of no more than 6 feet. And, of course, this is the absurd thinking of the likes of Roger Julian Hallam, Gail Bradbrook, and George Barder. And anyone who really hasn't cottoned on yet that Extinction Rebellion is a social experiment, which Roger Hallam will undoubtedly be awarded a PhD for demonstrating simply how easy it is to manipulate the gullible masses. All you got to do is tug at the heartstrings and get them to put all logic out of the window. But nonetheless, I'm sure Extinction Rebellion still thinks it's got some legs. But, its Achilles heel is the fact that the leadership, of course, there's a non-existent leadership, but anyway, the non-existent leadership making it very clear that their grassroots groups are not to engage in opposition to 5G. Now, that should be a massive clue. But there again, if one looks at the background of Gail Bradbrook, one of the 3 non-existent Extinction Rebellion leaders, you will find that she has been very much at the heart of promoting technology and internet and connectivity and inclusive connectivity. and indeed pushing the Internet of Things. But anyway, more of that a bit later. So expect that we're going to see more drone BS trotted out in the media as the establishment endeavours to demonise drones to the extent that basically anyone seen flying a drone is immediately reported to the police as a prospective terrorist. Of course, model aircraft flying has been a hobby for best part of 100 years or so, 100 plus years probably, and yet model aircraft have never been a problem, and neither would drones, except that the versatility of drones as such gives the establishment a problem because they don't want people watching what they're doing behind high fences or high hedges. Well, talking of behind high fences and high hedges, Cuadzilla, the fracking company looking to frack the bejesus out of the northwest of England, moved a whole bunch of kit back onto Preston New Road yesterday, announcing that they were getting ready to frack their second well. Well, call it a hunch, but that is not going to end well. And despite the Chief Executive Officer, Francis Egan, who draws an outrageous salary and benefits package for running an 18-person company, and yet, he says, well, we're going to use a different type of frack fluid, one with a higher viscosity, which should, in theory, mean that we can carry more sand with less water and therefore run the risk of, or reduce the risk of a further seismicity. Well, call it a hunch, but don't think that's going to happen. I think that basically the moment you fire up those frack pumps, then the moment that you unleash the fluid into the geology, guess what? It's going to trigger more seismic activity. But of course, the reality is that there may be another agenda here. And Francis Egan will, of course, be desperately looking at alternative revenue streams on the basis that they're not going to be getting very much in terms of gas returns. And of course, the most likely revenue stream is leasing the borehole to the nuclear industry, and allowing those boreholes to be used for the disposal of toxic nuclear waste. And anyone who says that that is just a rampant conspiracy theory clearly hasn't been listening for the past 5.5 years now, where I and others have been spelling out that all of the documentation in the public domain alludes to the possibility, even the probability, that building a network of deep boreholes across the north of England was perhaps never even about fracking for unconventional hydrocarbons in the first place. It was about creating a vehicle for a network of deep boreholes that could be used for the disposal of toxic nuclear waste. And of course, that technology, that industry, has been driven for the past 2 decades now out of Sheffield Hallam University, and the leading player there is Marcus Gibb. And just have a look at the work of him over the past couple of decades, and you'll see that he, despite the fact he's now retired, is still pushing for the deep borehole disposal agenda to be the means by which Britain meets its obligation to find a permanent home for its nuclear waste. So anyone who thinks that basically fracking is over, they might be right on that front, but don't for 1 minute think that you're out of the woods, because anytime these companies rock up, whether it's Cuadzilla, whether it's the newly created York Energy, which has taken over from Third Energy in North Yorkshire, or of course INEOS, these chancers are always looking for the profitability, for the greatest return on their investment, and that is certainly not going to come from gas, but it could come from nuclear waste. So important to stay on the game. And of course, this is very much also linked in with the 5G agenda, because you know, this is very much an experiment. It's an experiment to be dumping nuclear waste down deep boreholes adjacent, in some cases, to communities, to rural communities. And of course, 5G is a massive experiment. And anyone who looks closely at the language used by those who try to defend this industry and this rollout of 5G microwave technology, you know, cannot fail to notice that nobody ever makes the categoric claim that it is safe. And that's because they can't. They simply either point the finger and say, well, Public Health England says it's safe, or BEMRI says it's safe. No, they don't. Every institution basically states that there are concerns and that they need to be managed. And yet the Nuremberg Code makes it very clear that if anyone is participating in an experiment, then there is a requirement for them to absolutely, tacitly and explicitly agree to participation in that experiment. And that is not being the case here, because nobody has agreed to be part of the 5G rollout. And of course, the evidence suggests that in those universities that have been set up as test beds for 5G, then coincidentally, these are the universities where there have been spates of unexplained suicides. So 6 years ago, the rollout of the unconventional gas agenda, i.e. fracking, was a very, very significant concern and affected potentially 20% of the population. 5G is a much greater concern and is potentially going to affect 100% of the population, unless you happen to have the luxury of living underground and don't have any need to come to the surface. So it's absolutely time to take an interest in 5G, because we don't have 5 or 6 years. In 5 or 6 years, then the 5G technology will have had its effect, and people will be so dumbed down that 6G, 7G or whatever comes next will simply roll out and nobody will care. So this is quite possibly the last opportunity that humanity has to take a genuine interest in the long-term well-being of not just humanity, but all organic life. Failure to take that interest now, failure to do your own research, failure to decide how it is that you're going to contest this pernicious technology, this pernicious control grid, will condemn future generations to lives of such unimaginable abject misery. And it will be all down to our collective apathy, allowing the rampant global corporatists to roll out, I was going to say untried and untested technology, but of course it's not true. It has been tried, it has been tested, but in the military environment. And it is well documented, the concerns that physicians have over the negative health impact of those who have been exposed to battlefield microwave technology, leading to depression, leading to self-harming, and in some cases suicide. And this is the technology that's going to be rolled out on a largely unsuspecting, uncaring population. But that small percentage of people that does care, that's the percentage of people that needs now to step up to the plate and do what needs to be done to prevent this experimental technology being rolled out on the civilian population. And across the world now, there are hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of groups and organizations all campaigning to get this 5G rollout delayed, or a moratorium in place until it is proven beyond any reasonable doubt that 5G microwave frequencies are safe. And that ain't going to happen, because we know that there are problems with the existing frequencies, and particularly impacting on those who are extremely EMF sensitive. Now, you know, as with everything, there's always going to be some people affected, but once it starts to get to significant percentages, then that's when you know that this is being done deliberately. And anyone associated with the telecoms companies, anyone associated with the contractors who are installing and erecting the infrastructure, and certainly anyone associated with local authorities, whether that's be local council, district council, county council, MPs, anyone who doesn't actually do what needs to be done to stop this atrocity, then you are by default complicit. So the ball is already rolling, and tomorrow I shall be at Conway Hall in Red Lion Square in London for a 5G awareness event, and this will kick off at 8 o'clock. I think doors open at 7:30, and then of course on Monday I shall be at the Phoenix Centre with John Kitson in Exeter, then on I believe it's Wednesday in Totnes, and then on Thursday in Torquay, and all that information will be on my Facebook pages, and I'll be obviously putting it out on Twitter as well. So thanks for joining me today, and if you're not interested in watching the cricket on Sunday, then use the time, if you haven't already, to take a look at the increasing concerns by academics and scientists and even industry professionals who are concerned that 5G is being rolled out before anyone can be certain about the long-term effects. Or maybe they are certain about the long-term effects, which is why they want to roll it out quickly before anybody actually really catches on or any traction is gained by the 5G awareness campaign. So you have a great weekend, and I will be back with you on Monday morning at 8:30. You take care now.